It's a critical time for the Raiders. The search for a head coach and a GM is on. And yet, as bleak as it may seem, this time it feels a little different. With minority owner, the GOAT, TB12 in the fold, just how attractive is Las Vegas as a destination? The panel is ready to break it all down. All that and more coming up right now on Sin City Beat.
From Las Vegas, this is Sin City Beat.
Welcome to Sin City Beat. I'm Mike Davis. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Sin City Beat is the show that dissects the Vegas sports world through the eyes of the sports reporters and storytellers leading the charge. Joining me today in the studio to break down this critical offseason for the Silver and Black, we have Steve Cofield, host of Cofield and Company on ESPN Las Vegas. Harry Ruiz, Spanish play-by-play announcer and host on Raider Nation Radio. And of course, Q Myers of ESPN Las Vegas and host of Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio. Great to have all you guys with us. So let's kick this baby off with the head coaching search, something everybody is talking about. So far we know the Raiders have either scheduled or completed interviews with these following candidates. We have former Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll, Lions DC Aaron Glenn, Lions OC Ben Johnson, Broncos DC Vance Joseph, Ravens OC Todd Monken, former Jets head coach Robert Saleh, and Chiefs DC Steve Spagnuolo. So Harry Ruiz, what are you hearing, and who would be your top choice out of all those candidates?
I mean, the sexiest name right now is Ben Johnson, a guy that everybody seems to want to be bringing into their building after the success that he has had so far with the Detroit Lions. And from everything that we've heard from reports, it's Tom Brady that has attracted him to be able to have this interview, and the Raiders even having a shot at having him. And one of the big reasons why they also got rid of Tom Telesco, or that they dismissed him, was that it's a more attractive situation if you have both openings and not just bringing in the head coach and working with somebody that was already placed. So I think that Ben, he's the biggest name right now in the head coaching search, not only for the Raiders, but for a lot of teams. And I like it that the Raiders right now, they have a real shot in bringing him in the building.
I mean, Harry, I can't imagine some of these calls you would be calling out. I mean, with the Ben Johnson playbook, we all remember the fake stumble. That a play like that for the Silver and Black, you would be losing your vocal cords.
Hey, we were averaging like 2 touchdowns a game this season, so I'll be very happy if we up that number a couple notches.
Something like that would be great. Steve Q, what are you guys hearing? What's the temperature right now with this GM search? And head coach search?
Well, the head coach search is, like Harry said, Ben Johnson is the sexy name. I believe he's the number one choice for the Raiders. He would be the one that they really want. And the fact about, to kind of your point and Harry's point about Tom Brady, his effect and his role, he got them the interview. Ben Johnson was very selective. Even last year, he was very selective with what he wanted to do. He could have been a head coach last year and chose to go back to Detroit. He turned down the Jets. He turned down the Saints. But he took the Raiders. He took the Raiders because of TB12. He got him in the door. So I was talking about it at the barbershop. I said, he's got street cred. Tom Brady brings street cred. And they're like, wait, hold on. You just said Tom Brady brings street cred, which sounds silly, but it's factual. Like, he brings, credibility to this Raiders organization. So a guy like Ben Johnson is the guy. I'll say, as much as he's, hot and desired by the Raiders, I think that Pete Carroll is also in that conversation. It's probably a 1-2 race between those two guys.
Okay, Steve?
I think this is great with Brady because it does open things up. There are some challenges that the Raiders have right now. They're not the most attractive franchise in terms of recent history. There's a quarterback issue. So they've got to work through some of those weaknesses, but I'm all over the map on this one. So I like Pete Carroll from a stability standpoint. If you go off the radar and you want someone on the offensive side, I think Todd Monken would be great. I still think they should be making multiple calls for Bill Belichick. I would love to see Belichick turn his back on North Carolina. I think it would be one of the funniest things ever in football. But he'd be great to cover. I think he would win. So I'd love him to make a run at Bill Belichick. Now, you can see I'm all over the map. I got 2 older guys who are defensive guys and then a young offensive stud.
Yes. Well, Steve, I want to stay with you for a second because last week, and Harry, I want you to jump in on this as well. Q and I were having a whole discussion about Dion as well with the Belichick thing. How much, how realistic is the Dion and even the Belichick turning his back on UNC? I mean, is this something that could really occur? How likely is this?
I think the Belichick thing could happen. I mean, Mike Florio had a great story yesterday, and I think it's a legit concern. Why is the North Carolina staff filled out? Mike Lombardi fired back on Florio and was like, we're taking our time. You're taking your time in college football right now?
Right.
To me, that's just
That doesn't happen.
That's
That
pure.
doesn't happen.
It's
Yeah.
pure insanity.
Yeah.
So I think Belichick is still realistic to have conversations with, and you got to try. And you know what? Screw it. In some of these other situations where the organization seems a little wishy-washy, I don't know that wishy-washy is the right word with the Steelers and Tomlin. I'd be calling Tomlin's agent, trying to work him.
See, I like
you
a lot
throw
of
the net out there and see who you can get, and then they've got a lot of good candidates. And I don't want to insult them, but they've got backup candidates who would probably take the job. Shoot as high as you can.
30 seconds, Harry. I just want to hear what you have to say. It seems like Dallas and the Raiders both have this interest. They're both attracted to the shiny object of the Dion or the Belichick. 30 seconds. Who do you think? Why would they choose us over the Cowboys?
I don't think Belichick is coming. I don't think Deion is coming. I would like Deion Sanders because he made Colorado attractive like that in his first season under the Buffaloes, and that's what I would like to see with the Raiders, with bringing that aura that he brings to the team. Belichick, I don't see it very realistic right now, and it's the new era in college football. It's like, hey, you start throwing NIL money, you'll start getting players left
By
and
the way,
right.
no one wants a Cowboys job. With Jerry Jones, MD is such a better owner. There's no restrictions
Yeah.
on money. There's
Yep.
no games. He's not in every freaking meeting.
Every press
You're heard-
conference.
You
doing
heard
all
it
that.
there from Steve Cofield. All right, well, Tom Telesco is out after one season at the helm. Reports of Brady wanting synergy between the head coach and the general manager roles may have forced Mark Davis's hand. Now the Silver and Black will pair a brand new tandem. Coming up, we're going to hear what the panel has to say when it comes to the search for a new GM.
You're watching Sin City Beat.
Okay, so the Raiders will become just the second franchise in the Super Bowl era to enter a season 3 years in a row with a brand new GM and head coach. It's insane. Who will Mark Davis bring in to establish some stability, some consistency? The Raiders have requested interviews with the Bucs assistant GM John Spytek and the Packers VP of Player Personnel John Eric Sullivan. It's always cool when you have two first names. Steve, how do you see this GM shuffle shaking out right now?
Well, it sounds like Spytek would be the favorite of Tom Brady, but I think a lot of it depends on which head coach they bring in. If they have to wait for Ben Johnson for a while, I think Ben Johnson has been tied to Ray Agnew. I don't know how this is going to work out because I think the head coach can be picky too. What Johnson's like, nah, I don't want to work for Spytek. No, thank you, and I'll wait another year. I'll pick another job. So I think that it's a very delicate mix here. First, based on who the head coach is going to be.
Obviously, when Telesco hits on Jackson Powers Johnson, DJ Glaze, Brock Bowers, I mean, when you do something like that, you're not inefficient. You're good at your job. This is really, they basically need to take a GM that the head coach is going to be amenable and excited about. What are you guys hearing? I mean, Harry, what type of GM do you think we even need? Because when you think of like the Lions, right, the synergy there between Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, or you think of Les Snead and McVay. I mean, the way that these GMs are hitting on these players in the third, fourth, fifth round, you start seeing why these teams are in the playoffs.
And
the Howie Roseman. So we need a GM that is of that caliber.
And even the undrafted free agents. You saw the playoff game where the Rams, they fielded a defense with a lot of young players that most of them weren't drafted early in the draft, some undrafted free agents. You want somebody that is able to evaluate talent that way. And Spytek is a very attractive name. You look at his past with Tom Brady, as Cofield just mentioned, a former teammate of his in college. He was in the Bucs front office when he played for the Buccaneers, so they have that connection. Ben, the interesting thing here, we go back to the previous coaching search where Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco were brought in. They didn't want a rookie head coach with a rookie GM. So where does the team stand right there, having now Tom Brady as a voice in the building? Would you be willing to bring somebody in that hasn't been a GM in the past? That's a big question now.
Q, when you're a GM, you're on the GM carousel, you're taking all these interviews, why would you be so compelled to go to a place that just fired a GM who didn't even really get his footing, had 1 year there, really did everything you asked of him in a lot of ways? Maybe the Gardner Minshew thing, not the brightest idea.
Telesco got caught up in the middle, though. He got caught up in the crossfire. He got caught up in the power change, the power shift.
But
That's
how
going
does
on.
the optics of that
Well,
impact
that's
a
what
new
I'm leading
GM?
to, right? Because Brady now is selling the fact that whoever you come in with, and again, it's not really about. It could be Spytek, it could be Sullivan. They've requested White out of Pittsburgh. It's whoever's going to be comfortable with the next head coach. That's what it's going to be. They're going to tie these two together, like you see in San Francisco with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and others. They're going to come in together, tied at the hip, and have an opportunity to build it. That's what Tom Brady's selling. This is not going to be something that's overnight fix. It's going to be a build, and you're going to have the opportunity to do it. So all these guys that are assistant GMs or player personnel guys are going to have their chance to run their own team. There's only 32 of them. So we can always talk about all these different teams across the league. We're like, that job's not sexy. Nobody wants that job. There's only 32 of them. So somebody's going to want that job and that opportunity. And guys like Sullivan has been in the Packers organization over 20 years, right? Spytek's been doing really good things under Jason Lank there in Tampa Bay. So he knows that tree. So it's going to be all coming down to who they're comfortable with, who they can line it up together with and say, okay, we're going to build this thing together. So that's what's happening.
Steve, last thing I want to ask you, because as a native of Philadelphia, for me, I always think actually it's more Howie Roseman running the show, and the success of this team is the roster that he puts out on that field. Sirianni, although he's the figurehead and the head coach, it's less about him. For the Raiders and what we're trying to do here with a new head coach and a new GM, is there a world we might live in where it's actually more about the GM than hitting on the head coach for the success of this franchise?
Potentially, right? It's more about Tom Brady and whoever he wants to run the club. And that's really where it all starts.
Yep.
Ben Johnson may not be a good head coach, but if you give him players, then he's either going to be, Sirianni. I don't know if that's the greatest example, but a coach will survive based on the talent he has. I feel bad for Mike Tomlin. I don't know if he has a hand in player personnel, but they don't have a quarterback plan. Whoever's running that club, they haven't put it together.
Nope.
If I were Tomlin, I've been saying it the last couple of days, I'd walk. I'm not dealing with getting jerked around in the media. I'd go look for another job and find my quarterback. They're really, if you're a head coach taking a job in an organization like the Raiders without the quarterback, you really got to trust the GM and the president.
All right. My producer, James Edward Barrickman IV, he's a Yinzer, and he wants Tomlin to walk too. I think it's weird, but I would love Tomlin.
He'd have another job
anywhere.
before he got to his car.
100%. All right, well, he's a 7-time Super Bowl champion. He's broadcasting the Super Bowl right here on Fox 5, and he owns a 5% minority share in the Las Vegas Raiders. It's that dude with the gorgeous cheekbones. Come on, Harry, right? Those are great cheekbones. Just how much of an impact does Tom Brady have on the head coach and GM search? Q tees off first after these words. All right, welcome back to Sin City Beat. Well, Tom Brady's influence on the Raiders might be the exact game changer this franchise needs. Just how much is Mark Davis leaning on TB12? How active is the GOAT in these coaching and GM interviews? So Q, shed some light on this. I mean, he's broadcasting games in the playoffs right now. That's a full-time job. That's a big workload. How involved do you really think Tom Brady is in this hiring process? Is he in every interview for head coach, GM?
I don't know if he's in every interview, but he's heavily involved in the process. He's involved in recruiting, right? He recruited Ben Johnson to even take the interview with the Raiders, which was already big. But the thing that he's doing is he's reaching out. He could pick up the phone. Like, think about this. He could pick up the phone and call Bill Belichick. Hey, what do you think about this? Pick his brain. Just do some fact finding, which is what he's done. He can talk to Richard Seymour, who's also part minority owner. He can talk to anyone. If you're a star in the league, if you're an established coach in the league, if you're anyone in the league and Tom Brady's on your phone, you're picking it up, right? So he has all the ability and the cachet, I should say, to be able to just reach out to basically anyone he wants. So yeah, he's heavily involved. Mark Davis has let it be known at the meetings in Dallas that he wants Tom Brady involved in the process, not just with finding the next quarterback, but helping putting this team together. That is a big deal.
Well, let me ask you this, because me personally, my personal opinion, I'm a big Tom Brady guy. I think he's great. Devil's advocate, though. We've seen a lot of GOATs in the past in the sports world. They're not so great at this thing. Michael Jordan.
I live in the Michael Jordan world. He's the greatest basketball player of all time, right? We can all argue that. But he's a terrible owner, terrible coach hirer, terrible personnel guy.
John Elway, Brock Osweiler. You say two words, right? I mean, this happens more often than not. So, Steve, why should we trust Tom Brady as an evaluator of talent, as a guy who can actually, see something else beyond himself and actually evaluate talent when it comes to head coaching, GM, and players?
Simple. If you want to compare Jordan to Brady, I don't think Michael Jordan has ever been or was a people person. I don't think Jordan, hangs out when has conversations that doesn't involve some sort of gambling. With Brady, I think Brady is really likable. I think he can be a regular guy. He talks to people, and that's the key. If basically anyone will take your call, then you have a rep of not being a jackass. Right. You have a rep of being likable.
And also look at it this way. He's not even eligible to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame yet. He's going to be there in the first year that he's eligible. He was in the league a couple years ago. He was winning a championship with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers not long ago. So he has that recency with this league where he was on that field, that he knows what you need to win in this league. I think that's great, and also something positive, even though the league tried to restrict him with not being in team meetings, the production meetings with Fox, and practices with the teams, with the production crew. Well, that gives him a little bit more time to be like, okay, I can't be there in Detroit for practice. I'll be in Vegas conducting interviews with head coaches. So take some negatives with some positives.
Also, what does it say about a guy who maybe had some rough times and was on the outs with Belichick at one point?
Right.
That he can call him and they can converse. Yeah. Like, you know what? I may not like you when we work together, especially at the end.
Yeah.
But I'm smart enough to realize you have a lot of knowledge. I think that not all people can do that. I can't.
No, I think
it's to not hold a grudge. That's a special quality.
That's a big deal. Q, we got 2 minutes left here. Sometimes here on Sin City Beat, it's like we need to have mics going and be live during the commercial breaks, because a lot of nuggets, ladies and gentlemen, come out during the commercial breaks. You were saying, I just want clarity on this, because we know Shador's relationship, Deion's relationship with Tom Brady.
Right.
There was a lot of synergy, cohesiveness there. You're saying that Deion's people really did reach out to the Raiders, and if Tom Brady's active in this search, why wouldn't that be a good situation?
Deion wanted the Raiders, and Deion wanted the Raiders because Deion wants Shador and Shiloh. Deion does not, he does not see life without his boys, which is understandable for a father, right? My son's away at college. I get it, right? I miss him too. I don't think that he was prepared for that, and people that I've talked to in Colorado have said you could tell by the end of the season he was starting to get that, oh, wow, this thing is coming to an end. Now what? So, yeah, his people reached out, but the Raiders aren't interested in going that direction. I think they're interested in his son, but they're not really interested in Deion. And I don't know if Deion would really want an NFL job for the right reasons. So I think it's more about his boys as opposed to being a coach in the league.
So 30 seconds. If Shador goes to Dallas, does that mean Deion goes to Dallas?
They have an opening. I could see him doing it. Sure. Yeah. I think that he would definitely be willing and able to do it if in fact Shador ends up there.
Okay.
But they have to get the coach before they ever get to the draft.
Listen, football, a father's love, it's a beautiful story right here. I could already see us talking about this for long periods of time here on Sin City Beat. Before we leave, we're going to be ranking the remaining head coaching destinations. Where do the Raiders fall with all these head coaching openings? That's next. All right, welcome back to Sin City Beat. Well, right now there are 5 franchises in the NFL with head coaching vacancies: the Bears, the Jags, the Saints, the Jets, and of course, our beloved silver and black, the Raiders. So, Steve, where do the Raiders, rank amongst these franchises in terms of attractiveness?
Dun, dun, dun.
I think the Raiders are number 2. I think the Bears are 1. I'll give you the bottom.
Yeah,
the
start.
least attractive job is the Cowboys, and second least attractive are the Jets.
Wow.
I would put the Jets last place, just with that owner situation, how everything is going down.
Yeah.
I know you can say the same about the Cowboys, but at least you're talking about a franchise that is one of the most popular, not only in football, but in the whole world in sports.
Yeah, they have a brand.
So
a really good brand. Yeah.
The same thing we can say about the Raiders. Whoever comes in and wins the next Super Bowl for the team, they're going to be one of the most historic coaches because it's been a 40-year wait. The same thing you can say about the Cowboys right now. But for me, if you talk about quarterback situations, you talk about Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence 1-2. But if you want to have a clean slate as a head coach coming in and not having a boss that you don't know that is already in place, I think the Raiders are the number 1 franchise in that case.
I mean, how do we solve this quarterback situation to make this more appealing? Because you're drafting at 6. I mean,
6 is easy, man. 6 is
Is
easy.
it?
That's not that difficult. I mean,
Last year.
I'm
we've
looking
seen
at a
Kansas
top
City.
3 that
Kansas
need
City traded up
quarterbacks.
from 24 to 10. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you can do it.
But the top 3 need quarterbacks.
Yeah, but Cleveland is one of the top 4, right? They're the number 2 team. They have a certain guy that they're probably looking at, and they also have their situation with Deshaun Watson. I know for a fact that Andrew Berry would be interested in trading back. I know that for a fact. from all the research and all the people I've talked to, he would be interested in trading back from number 2. Every quarterback, I'll just say it, Shador's not going to Cleveland. I guarantee you that Deion's not going to let him go to Cleveland.
You still have Tennessee and New York.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, look, that's, again, you have to do some work.
Right.
You know, being at 6 is not easy. It's not like you're just the guy's going to fall to you. But yeah, there's no doubt that you can get to number 2 if you want.
Can you imagine being those quarterbacks? One week you're thinking about Las Vegas and New York 1 and 2, and then the next week it's Nashville and Cleveland, and it's like, well, that's a kind of a drop.
It's interesting. And Steve, I mean, just from the ownership standpoint, you know, I think it's iffy with the Jaguars. That's Shad Khan. That's a weird situation.
What's iffy there is the GM. I don't understand
Trent
why they kept Baalke.
Yeah.
I actually think they can be a good organization. That to me, that's an attractive job, but you got to fix the GM part of it. You have a quarterback. I still believe in Trevor Lawrence. I know lots of other people don't. But you nailed it. Most of my concern, if I'm going to be an employer, the head coach of the GM, is the owner. And it depends on your perception of Mark Davis. I think Mark Davis is a passionate guy. I think the money is there. There are some other organizations that owners are meddling or just have shown over the years, and that's why I had the Jets towards the bottom. Jerry Jones is cheap, and Woody Johnson is just a pain in the ass, and sometimes he's involved. Other times, you know, he's going to be in the UK again. It's like, are you in or are you out? And then, I mean, who knows what happened with Rodgers and the GM? And it's just the Jets are a mess.
And his son, I mean, his son is running, you know, Madden 2025 in the executive office. But you know, I just think
GM mode.
To me, I think that we need a little bit of stability, and we got to let things grow and develop and flourish, right?
And that's why Ben Johnson and company would make sense, because he would be the one that gets the most staying power because he's the young guy. Pete Carroll would make sense because he's been there, done that. He can create the culture, probably get it turned around as quick as possible. But how long is he there for? Is he there for 3, 4, 5 years, which would be great because tell me the last coach that had been with the Raiders for 4 or 5 years. That'd be great. But at some point, Pete Carroll's going to run out.
Let's be honest, though. Pete Carroll's cardiovascular health is better than everybody. It's better than everybody on this panel. And I'm 32 years old. But listen, I just want to say this. Thank you to my panel, Q, Steve, Harry. I'm Mike Davis. We'll see you next time here on Sin City Beat.